I hope it doesn't turn into a Boys Slow Down type of album, you know? I hope not. That was a clip from our first album reaction to Lil Uzi Vert's new album, Eternal Atake 2. If you guys want to see the entire live album reaction, check out the link in the pinned comment or in our description. And just a disclaimer, Ant wasn't in that reaction, and he won't be in this review, but he will be back on the show soon, stronger than ever. But let's get started with this official Lil Uzi Vert album review. So it felt like Uzi dropped Eternal Atake 2 out of nowhere. There was an interview that he did a couple of months ago where he did tease that it would come out, but he also teased Love is Rage 3 coming out and other projects. So we didn't really know if we should, pay serious attention to that announcement. But now we have the album. It is a sequel, and already we're seeing people calling it the Eternal Disaster. I, coined it Eternal Headache too, and it's because the album's not good. I can spoil that take right away off the jump, but let's get into the artist performance. And when it comes to this album in comparison to the Stink tape, which he dropped in 2023, I will say that he knew better to not be as experimental vocally as he was on that album. Like, you're not going to be getting any metal covers from Uzi on this project, but you will still see him experiment with his vocal styles and really just pitch up his vocals or pitch them down, whatever the case may be. But before we get into the negative side of the artist's performance, because that is where the bulk of the songs lay for me, I do want to talk about the positive, starting off, of course, with the first two songs. Looking at a song like We Good, you have Uzi hitting us with frequent flow switch after flow switch. Every single flow is catchy and fun. It was very nostalgic of like 2016 to 2019 Uzi. And my only complaint with that one was that the vocal mix sounded a bit off, a bit dirty. So that was the only issue I had with that, but it was a very fun song. It was a solid opener. Then you go into Light Year Practice, and this song is an absolute banger. Uzi was so charismatic. He was so lively throughout his performance of this track, and I love how he had the keep going ad-libs that really boosted the hype level of the track. And not only that, but he just comes to us with these fast flows, one after the other, and he ends up sounding like a madman in the best of ways. And I love that he builds momentum with the I don't think they're ready part until you reach that climax. And I wish there were more tracks like that on this album, where there's sort of like this build up to this big splash, this big moment, this release of tension, but you're not really getting that anywhere else on the album. But now, to speak on the negatives, you definitely have Uzi experimenting vocally in terms of using this deeper voice. And the first sighting of that is on Meteor Man, where the best way I could describe his deep voice is that it sounds a little bit throaty, and that's what makes me think that it's a little bit similar to Cardi's deep voice. It definitely sounded like that on a song like Meteor Man. Apart from that, I mean, it just didn't really click to me in terms of hearing him go from that deep voice to the regular tone. It didn't work out too well. Apart from that, the hooks on this album are just not catchy whatsoever, to be honest with you. Looking at like the wah 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 hook on Piers in the Mars, or Pars in the Mars, excuse me, or Yeah 'Cause She Stank on She Stank, very repetitive, very uninteresting. The melodies don't really stick. Apart from that, the performance is decent on a song like Not an Option. Cool flows and ad-libs, but the auto-tune was a bit over-abused from my liking on that track. Then you have songs like Mr. Chow, where the performance isn't bad, it's just painfully boring. You have Uzi going into what feels like this pop R&B groove that is similar to a Drake song on the song Chill Bay. You have these pitched up vocals, and then you have these very sleepy melodies. So that was another track that I didn't really enjoy too much. The auto-crooned vocal notes on Black Hole are absolutely horrific. It's something I never want to hear again. You also have these backing chipmunk vocals that bleed into the mix and sound absolutely terrible. And you're also getting one of Uzi's worst ever performances on the song Godard's Song, where he has the nuh-uh-uh hook, and he sounds very whiny. He's pronouncing words with a strange accent, and the melodies don't land whatsoever, and then that whininess continues onto the song Perky Sex. So to me, there was just too many recycled flows on this album, poor experimentation with the vocal inflections, and with Uzi, you expect fire melodies, you expect catchy hooks, and you didn't really get much of that at all. So I feel like overall, the rating I have to give for the artist performance is going to be bad. Let's go into the content category for this album. And before I actually do, I do want to speak about the features, right? Because when you look at the track list, there's only one feature that's listed, and it's Big Time Rush, and it's on the song The Rush. And this is one of the biggest examples I've seen on a track list of clickbait, because you go into the song and all they're doing is giving a spoken word intro, which felt pretty strange. It's them, the band from Nickelodeon fame, saying, hey, you're not Big Time Rush, we're Big Time Rush, Lil Uzi. And that's all they say. They're just spewing nonsense on the start of that song, and it was absolutely pointless and kind of made me laugh. But apart from that, you are getting also Charlie Puth background vocals on the song Conceited. That was one of the more, I would say, melodic tracks on the track list, and his vocals kind of sounded artificial, didn't really add much to the track. So no rating for the features. Like I said, there's not really much to review there because he kind of went solo with this album. But let's speak about the content of the album. So starting off with We Good, that's where you're getting, I guess, maybe some of the most real reflection you're going to get from Uzi on this album. He's rapping about having taken some time away from the limelight, but staying connected to his mom and providing for her and his family, reading over his contracts, and just navigating through his life. So typical Uzi there, nothing special, but at least there was, I guess, a bit of focus on that track. Then you get into certain lyrics on that intro, We Good, and then moving on to Light Year Practice, and it's Uzi rapping about being off of the Nas. So he promotes nitrous oxide on We Good by saying, I was on that Nas, and then on the following song, they rap, I should say, I'm fresh off the nitrous. And if that wasn't bad enough, there's sound effects of what sounds like Uzi just doing the whippets in the middle of the song The Rush. So obviously we don't stand by that. Very interesting choices there, but it wouldn't be an Uzi album without a lyric about him standing on his money, and you do get that on the song Light Year when he raps, stand on my money, I'm tall as Mutombo. Apart from that, in terms of subject matter, I mean, in a nutshell, it's Uzi making money, flexing his ice, fucking your hoe, going to bed, waking up, and just repeating the cycle. I mean, it's kind of what you expect. I wasn't bummed out by that when it came to this album, just because that wasn't an expectation going in. But the lyrics do get tiresome on a song like Meteor Man when you just hear him repeating, this is an aura, this is an aura, this is an aura, this is an aura. Like, at a certain point, the repetition does grow stale, without a doubt. On Space High, you have Uzi addressing Ebro and any doubters by rapping. They say that my lyrics ain't lyricism. I say that you just hating much. Apart from that, I mean, you got to pick out the horrible one-liners on the album, right? There's stuff like she was giving me necklace, or she gave me head like a comb, or all white like dandruff. Another one, she's trying to fuck the gang like the shit the Bang Bros. And finally, every time I take the shrooms, I got to take a shit. So, I mean, Uzi for Lyricist of the Year, maybe that choice is yours, but ultimately, I don't think most people are paying attention to the writing and the subject matter. Overall, it is bad. I have to be honest. I have to give it a bad rating. But let's move into the production of this album. And the production was primarily handled by Brandon Finessen, who's been working very closely with Uzi in recent years. You also have Us Kids, Lil 88, Cashmere Cat, and others. But most surprisingly about this album is that it was actually mixed and mastered by Mike Dean, which really shocked me just because the mixing on a lot of these tracks, maybe intentionally, was very weak and very poor. For example, looking at like We Good, the vocal mix was very dirty and rough on that song. But mixing aside, my main complaint with the production on this album is that this is supposed to be a sequel to Eternal Atake. So I think that most fans were expecting the soundscape to be this futuristic trap sound and to have these spacey synths ringing off. And you do get that, just in very little doses. For example, on Light Year, I love the racing spacey synths. I love the sick bass drop that you get, and the trap drums are absolutely incredible. But you're not getting many instances of hearing these types of futuristic instrumentals. Instead, you're getting these formulaic, synth-driven trap beats, ultimately. For example, on a song like We Good, stabs of bass and consistent 808, but even though the synths are moving the production forward, all of those chords are getting drowned out by the drums themselves. The beat for the Rush has this eerie melody, and the synth sound kind of dysfunctional on it, to be honest. I wasn't a fan of that production at all, and you're just getting this generic, basic 808 drum pattern. And at the end of the song, we hear what sounds like a spacecraft about to be taking off, and that's sort of like the closest that we come to an outer space setup on this album. The only continuation of any type of like space story or atmosphere comes on the outro, Space High, where we do get the actual sounds of a UFO taking off, but there is no connective tissue when it comes to any space theme, not only in the lyrics but also in the production. And it's not like there was a big through line from song to song on Eternal Atake, but at least it felt like, you know, Uzi was in space when making the album, and it felt like, you know, the world building actually had some effort that went into it, but that wasn't the case with this one. One of the worst beats of the entire year is Chips and Dip, where you have this absolutely blown out bass. The distortion is extreme and it ruins the entire song. Another bad song was Perky Sex, and it's just one of the most poorly arranged beats of the year because you're getting these laser sound effects and you're also getting these Jersey Club drums, but only for like a limited amount of seconds. Like, it's like they decided to go with the idea and they're like, fuck it, I don't know, take out the Jersey Club drums, and then they just left it in the song unknowingly. Like, just very poorly arranged overall. I think that you're getting generic trap beats. You're not getting too many, I would say, interesting productions, even though a lot of them are progressive. You're getting a lot of instruments overpowering other sounds throughout the project, and I think that the production is not horrible. There are a couple of passable beats, so I'm going to give it a mid rating, but let's now go on to the replay value. So I'm going to be honest, there's only 2 songs out of the 16 songs in this track list that I could ever see myself revisiting again, and those are the opening 2 songs, We Good and then Light Year Practice. And I mean, even if I wasn't a big fan of the original Eternal Atake, as I mentioned not too long ago, at least there was this intention to immerse you into an experience, into a universe. With this album, it just felt like one of the most loosely thrown together Lil Uzi Vert projects. And even the idea of him admitting that this was him giving fans what they used to enjoy hearing from him sonically. I mean, if these tracks are not better than the older tracks that are done in the same style, what reason would you have to revisit the majority of this album? And for that reason, I'm going to give the replay value a bad rating. Let's go into my overall thoughts. After hearing Eternal Atake, the Pink Tape, Pink plus White, and now finally hearing Eternal Atake 2, I think there's been enough time that has passed and enough music for me to really make the claim officially that Lil Uzi has fallen off musically at this point. You know, there's not really much else for me to say. I feel like he's gone creatively bankrupt, and he's reached a point now where not only is he at a crossroads in terms of not knowing where to take his sound, but he doesn't seem confident in any of the styles that he's attempting, whether they be new or old. And I think that's really concerning. When it comes to this being a sequel, this did not feel like a fitting sequel whatsoever, in my opinion. It really felt like a cash grab just from, you know, it just felt like Uzi wanted to put out an album, maybe for label obligations or whatever the case may be, and they just got the idea that it would be great for marketing purposes to label this as a sequel to Eternal Atake, and yet not really make the music fit into that realm whatsoever. So it's as if they knew the music wasn't strong enough to sell this thing, so they're like, you know what? Why not get creative with the rollout? And that was one thing I did admire about this project. I thought the rollout was effective. It was to the point. And it really did get you excited for the music. And unfortunately, the music wasn't strong whatsoever. This is one of the weakest hip hop projects you'll lay ears on in 2024. And more than that, it's just sad that it seems like a true artistic regression for Uzi at this point. So overall thoughts, gets a bad rating for me. I think it is a bad album. I think it's safe to say it's the worst album in Uzi's catalog at this point. And I grew up loving Uzi's music, growing up into the SoundCloud era. So I'm always hopeful for a bounce back. But let me know in the comments, guys, how would you score this rating using our scale? And as I mentioned at the beginning of this, if you guys do want to catch our full album reaction, you guys could do so by hitting the link in our pinned comment or in our description. Thank you guys for watching until the end, and we'll see you next time. Peace.